Beautiful shot there of the Mohawk Valley and this fabulous cross-country venue that serves as a golf course most of the time, but it's elite racing in the collegiate realm today for cross-country early season action, as we're just a few days removed from ending the outdoor track and field season just a few miles away at Hayward Field, as the Diamond League final and the Prefontaine Classic was concluded. Just fabulous 2 days of competition, Tom. Now it has been graded out as the best single day, well, double day invitational, but the best meet ever when they've used that sort of scoring, which is a combination of the fields that were brought together and then the performances that happened when those fields were brought together.
I was stunned at how good those performances were, especially considering athletes had competed in Diamond League meets, which you called, in Jamais and in Europe, and that you would think that coming to the States for just one meet and having to adjust to all that after a whole season of running, I didn't have high expectations. And then you go to this meet, and it's unbelievable. I mean, 2 world records, American records, and marks for place all over the place. It was just an absolutely exceptional meet, and the crowd was great. Over 12,000 for both days. It was really great to see Hayward Field humming like that again. And
it will be humming again as they have just been awarded the U.S. Olympic trials next summer. And for a lot of those folks who were involved in the staging of the Tokyo trials, it is nice to see, because the situation that the city's found itself in, where, you know, A, people were reluctant to travel, and B, they were kind of keeping the crowds a little bit dialed down because of the safety precautions being put in place. This is really an opportunity for Eugene to kind of get its full opportunity to stage, even though obviously there's a lot of folks who are saying Eugene's gotten a lot of them over the years.
There are those folks that say that, but I will say this, that, you know, that Tracktown USA team led by Michael Riley and Jody Smith and Megan Robertson and so on and so forth do a marvelous job, and their hearts are in it, and you know, it's hard to beat the staging that Eugene has at Hayward Field with that group running the show. So
it's hard to beat this view as well, as you look high above what will be the unfolding drama of the women's 6K. Cal Poly bringing their women's squad here as well, perhaps bolstered by what they just witnessed the men do, which was to win both the team title and the individual title as well. You know, we kind of talked about in the preview, you know, kind of the big notable visiting squad here is BYU. They bring a lot of firepower, and of course the host Oregon squad that, you know, will have something to say about that team title before the end of the day.
That is going to be the battle between those two. And I just saw a pan of Izzy Thornton-Bott, the 25-year-old Australian who won this meet in 2021. And I expect her to come back and win again this year. What I didn't mention in the Open is Claudia Kazmierska, who was 4th in the NCAA 1500, just 2 spots behind Thornton-Bott. She is going to be a player in this as well. She's a little more of a speed merchant, though. She's a 2:03 46 800, 4:07 47 1500 runner.
You hear the whistle as the gun is ready to fire, and we are underway with the women's 6-kilometer race for the Bill Dellinger Invitational in 2023. Always one of the most fabulous parts of the sport of cross country, that initial race out from the boxes and the funnel into the main part of the race course. Again, if you didn't see the course map earlier on broadcast, it is a 2-kilometer loop, so the women will do exactly 3 of those. Really sets up well, as you'll see sort of almost instantaneously as the women run by. The spectators are able to move to another side of this loop, and so good spectator-friendly venue as well.
It's about as good a spectator-friendly course as you can get. The meet record 18:47.6 set by Katie Rainsberger when she was wearing the Oregon singlet, and Jordan Hasse, when it was held at Priest Trail, was the meet record holder back in the day, 1925-31 on that course. And you can see already BYU's got a bunch of their runners clustered in the front, and our defending champion, Sierra Atkins, whose great uncle is Tommy Smith. Atkins there in the middle in the UC Davis singlet with her teammate Brianna Weidler on her shoulder. Atkins, really the highlight of her season was winning this race last year. She's a veteran. She was 13th in 2021 and 4th in the Big West Cross Country Championships last year and 2nd in 2021.
What I'm struck by with BYU is it compares to what we saw with the Oregon men, where there was a sizable amount of unattached athletes. BYU putting everybody in uniform. They got 20 women that were stuffed into that little starting grid to get their day underway, so everyone having the opportunity to wear the singlet today.
Kaylee Mitchell looks very comfortable there. She's tucked in behind one of the BYU runners on the left side of your screen, almost in the middle side of the screen, the black and orange. Kaylee Mitchell, a long track season. Now she's moving out to the left just so our cameras can pick her up. And a 9:24 steeplechase at the USATF Championships. This young lady has done so much for Louis Quintana and that Oregon State program. She and Grace Featherstone-Ha have done just to lift this program to such a high level, and a credit to Coach Quintana, who took Kaylee Mitchell, an Oregon high school kid, and has made her a world-class steeplechaser.
Well, doing also a good job of building the base for the future, most notably getting a couple of standout Canadians in the field. I know a lot of folks who are subscribers to Runner Space Plus are benefiting from the fact that we have so much coverage north of the border, but two that we have spoken about a number of times during the last few years in high school track and field and cross country in Canada. Ruby Broadbent, who is wearing an Oregon State singlet as a freshman here, third of the Canadian juniors at 3,000 meters, and then Maya Beckler, who will race unattached today, is actually the Canadian junior champion at 1,500 meters. So, again, that's where, you can build from within, but then that reputation grows, and then folks in other parts of the regions, in this case, other parts of North America, saying, hey, I want to get involved in what you got going on there.
They definitely have a conduit to Canada, and Grace Featherstone-Ha should be credited for that. And Grace Featherstone-Ha has done marvelous under Quintana's leadership. She won the Pac-12 steeple and 5,000. Now you can see Linda Perez, the Big West 10,000-meter record holder, on the left there. Sierra Atkins on the right, our defending champion. Kaylee Mitchell right there in the middle. And then a cluster of BYU athletes up there as well. Now, Brianna Weidler going with her teammate Atkins as well. So all of the principal favorites are right in there, Paul.
And if you're just joining us for the women's race, when they reach the first timing mats, they will populate on a live graphic on the screen, so you'll be able to see, where everybody is in relationship to the leaders. We'll also have unofficial team scores populate through one of the great features of the live tracking and the live timing that we have for many of these events that we cover for you on runnerspace.com. But leaders now coming to that mat, so the first splits will be coming through here momentarily. 4:41 into the race, and Mitchell will have the lead. Weidler, and then Perez and Atkins, the defending champion. Lexy Halladay-Lowry of BYU, a name that many of you are familiar with, as she's had a successful career in her own right here in the early going, in 5th position overall. She was 4th at the steeplechase championships earlier this year, and was the 4th place finisher last year in the West Coast Conference cross country championship. Top Oregon athlete right now, it's Maddie Elmore, but she's back, Tom, in 10th position. There's 3 ducks between 10 and 15, but right now they are playing the slow game.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised. I know they went out kind of slow last year in this meet, but I'm a little bit surprised they're this far down. It must be a strategic call by Coach Schumacher. We saw them make a surge last year at about the 2-mile mark, but this is such a short distance that you kind of worry if you don't have your horses up there, and it's also hard to kind of move around. Izzy Thornton-Bott is in 12th. And you can see her with the sunglasses on the left of your picture, trying to get up there with that lead group. But BYU goes 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 right now. And that's going to be tough for Oregon to beat. And meanwhile, at the front, Kaylee Mitchell looks so relaxed. Paul, at the NCAAs, she was... she didn't run all that well 7th, but something happened between the NCAA and the USATF meet, where she was a different runner at the USATF meet. And look at this. I mean, she is kind of really pushing the pace and breaking it open early here.
Yeah, back through that that first timing, Matt, we had, it was about 9 seconds between the first and the 50th runner to cross the line. You see now that spread probably a little bit longer as the pace in front remains hot, and Mitchell is the one doing the driving at the front of the pack here, trying to break this open a little bit as the rest of the field maybe a little bit more compressed here when you get back through the the top 25 or 30 runners.
And it's interesting that Brianna Weidler, the Big West 5,000 meter record holder, and Linda Perez, the Big West 10,000 meter record holder, are right in there in that lead pack along with our defending champion Atkins. And as you mentioned, Lexy Halladay-Lowry, who's got great strength. She's a 15:47 5,000 meter runner, 9:41 steepler. She and then Jenna Hutchins, one of the greatest high school distance runners of all time, the former high school record holder at 5,000 meters in Johnson City, Tennessee, that 2020 year when it was hard to get any meets in at all.
Well, a little bit different race here on the women's side, which, happens more times than not. You'll see one race unfold in one gender and then the different race entirely with the other gender. In this case, we had a pretty good, decent pack of men that were staying pretty close to each other through well past the halfway mark. This time, Mitchell of Oregon State deciding to try to put some distance between her and the rest of the field. That distance now about almost 2 seconds as they come through this second split point with Linda Perez of UC Riverside behind her. Weidler, Hutchins, Halladay-Lowry, Atkins, and Frenteway of BYU, the top Cougar in the field here for BYU as they work their way through. Now, Oregon's got a couple of athletes now in the top 10 with Maddie Elmore and Izzy Thornton-Bott. So, again, Oregon playing a different kind of race strategy here. And I look down now as they've got their top 4 in the top 18 does Oregon. And BYU still strong. They've got folks, top 4, Tom, in the top 10, but then their 5th athlete now in 18th. And that oftentimes just becomes the race to keep track of here, and this live timing affords us the chance to do so.
Very good point, Paul. They've got Sadie Sargent tied with Katie Clute of Oregon. She won the first cross-country meet of the year for the Ducks. And Taylor Roatinsky right behind. Again, her uncle, the course record holder on the men's side. So it could be this Clute, Sargent, Roatinsky, Anika Thompson battle that could determine the team title here.
But, Tom, look at this now. She was 2 seconds ahead of that chase pack just about a minute ago, and now from high above you see she's opened up a sizable gap.
Kaylee Mitchell, remember that name because she is an absolute stud, and I would not bet against her having a very good shot to make the U.S. Olympic team in the steeplechase this coming summer. She's 4:13, 48, 1500 runner. But look at her body mechanics, Paul. Head straight ahead, her eyes straight ahead. Great arm action. Very compressed, great turnover with her legs. Very confident looking. Very relaxed. I mean, she checks all the boxes when you talk about form and function. But we do have a spirited battle back there for second at the moment. Keep in mind that this course record of 18:47.6, I'm curious, she may be able to take a whack at that today if she keeps going the way that she's going.
So into the back half of the race here in Springfield at the 2023 Bill Dellinger Invitational. Cal Poly won both the individual title in the men's race along with the team title here, and the crowd's now gathering here to welcome the women down this stretch of the race as we go high above with our drone shot above this Pine Ridge Golf Club. And you can see the crowds kind of moving back and forth on different spots on the course. 2-kilometer loops for the women here, and 3 of them in total to reach the 6K distance.
It's interesting. Oregon State's running pretty well as a team. You mentioned Ruby Broadbent. She's having a good race. They're currently in 3rd, and this is without Grace Featherstone-Haugh. But Oregon State is ranked 17th nationally, and that's a well-deserved ranking because you throw Featherstone into this group, and boy, they're a tough out. Maddie Elmore running very well for Oregon. Thornton Bott moving up a little bit, but it is a bit surprising to see this delta between Mitchell and the rest of the field. This is a really stunning race. Not that we're surprised, but my gosh, she had such a late track season. You would have thought she wanted to kick back and relax for a bit, but she's in super shape, Paul.
As we see this head-on shot, looking back now to see how many women in that chase group. Looks about like 7 or 8, Tom, and then pretty much a blank slate of green grass behind them. Going back to the next group from high above, you can see maybe 2 there falling off the back of that chase pack as Mitchell comes through in 12:05.9 through that third split. And her lead now has grown to almost 11 seconds.
Yeah, she's really, really opening it up. And spirited battle for second between those Big West threesome of Perez, the 10,000-meter record holder, Atkins, the defending champion, and Weidler, who is the 5,000-meter record holder for the Big West. But then BYU comes in with Jenna Hutchins in 5th, Lexy Halladay-Lowry in 6th, Aubrey Frenteway in 8th. We haven't talked much about Frenteway, but she was BYU's #1 returning runner from the NCAA Cross Country Championships, and she's a 32:28.85 10,000-meter runner, 10th at the NCAA 10K last year, but first in the Western Coast Conference Cross Country last year. So Frenteway is a big stud.
So Oregon finally gets its 5th runner through, as they now have a team score of 73 points unofficially. BYU still holding on to the lead there with 50. Cal Poly and Oregon State and UCLA now the top 5. There is a look now at Izzy Thornton Bott, the Australian, as she comes through here. Maddie Elmore back there with Thompson. So Oregon trying to close the gap here by just kind of keeping their team together. And through that last split, Tom, you know, they had 4 of their athletes within kind of 6 places of each other. But it's that 5th runner that's going to matter most to the Oregon fortunes today, and that was Ellen Nelson, who was back at about 40th position. Now they will take additional runners out. They'll take unattached runners out, so the real-time scoring can often fluctuate there, and credit to these timers who figure out how to do this on a real-time basis. Look at all of that BYU contingent. Again, 20 women from BYU scheduled to toe the line here today in Springfield.
Yeah, BYU right now, I think the delta between them and Oregon may be too much to break up in the next 4 or so minutes of this race. I just don't see it happening because BYU has got that depth.
Yeah, Nelson was about 16 seconds back of Sadie Sargent, who I believe was the 5th
That's correct.
runner for BYU. So that would be the delta that they would have to make up. And it can happen a number of ways, and probably the best way for Oregon's hopes to change would be see Sargent start to slow down and Nelson catch up, and it's not an insurmountable thing if you can kind of cut that time in half and say, you know, meet somewhere in the middle there over the last closing stretch of this race. But look at our leader here on the women's side, Kaylee Mitchell of Oregon State, in absolute isolation to the rest of the field. Incredible performance here on her way to taking this Bill Dellinger Invitational Women's 6K with authority.
Oh, most definitely. Again, the clock, we have to look at that. 18:47.6 is the meet record, and I think she's got a real good shot at it. It is surprising to just see, she clearly from a credential standpoint was the #1 runner coming in. But as I said, you know, her track season extended so late, you wouldn't have expected her to have this level of fitness this early.
And Tom, her lead almost up to 16 seconds now as she continues to put good distance there. That race for second now looking more like a 2-athlete race, and it's a teammate battle from UCA Davis, Atkins and Weidler. And then Jenna Hutchins of BYU now has moved up into 4th position as Linda Perez begins to fall a little bit back. She was in 2nd going through the last split, but now down into 5th. And then BYU is Lexy Halladay-Lowry and Frenteway in 6th and 7th. And then that Oregon spread still tight as we go through. You see there in 8th, 9th, 11th, and 12th position. We'll keep an eye on where their fifth runner comes through. Again, Oregon still waiting for their fifth runner here as BYU's point total has been added to 53.
Well, and another nice note from David Monty here that Kaylee Mitchell is German-born and has dual citizenship. But the way she's running, she's going to have no problem making the U.S. team if she decides to go there.
I think we're going to have to give David producer credit for when we submit this for the Emmys.
Absolutely, and head researcher as well. Mitchell played basketball, volleyball, and soccer in high school, so she's got great athletic pedigree. And we've got, of course, with Sierra Atkins in second. The great uncle is Tommy Smith. So we've got some notable athletes here in this race. But Kaylee Mitchell, her expression has not changed at all on her face. I mean, she is so focused, so dialed in. It is really impressive.
Ellen Elson of Oregon moved up 2 spots in the standings to 38th position. She's now 20 seconds back of BYU's 5th scoring athlete, Riley Chamberlain, who came through actually, and probably the biggest help right now with BYU and trying to hold on to that team lead is they're benefiting by numbers. Chamberlain is running with 4 other BYU teammates, so I can see the team dynamic playing in there as they try to keep themselves all in a position to keep that 5th runner score as high as possible.
And one of those runners is J.C. Farmer from BYU, and you talk about pedigree. Her grandfather, Dixon Farmer, was one of the greatest decathletes at the time in U.S. history. Father, Matt Farmer, who works with us on many of our telecasts, he was a 6'11" high jumper, and then her brother, Josh Farmer, was the former Big West decathlon champion and will be competing his senior season for UC Irvine.
So closing stretches of this women's 6K at the Bill Dellinger Invitational, and Kaylee Mitchell of Oregon State is going to get the direction into that final chute and race to the finish line.
And 18:47.6 is the time to beat here. She may fall or will fall a little bit short, but boy, if she'd had some competition, I have no doubt she would have broken the meet record. But look at that facial countenance, so dialed in. Really, really impressive. And we've got just a really nice race for second coming up here, Paul.
As Mitchell maybe takes a little bit of a look over her shoulder here as they work their way around this final turn, and then she will move into the closing stretches of this race as our lead gator moves off the course here, and into the final chute comes Kaylee Mitchell. As Tom mentioned, it's been a long 2023 campaign for her, most notably on the track, but she has picked up off where she was gaining momentum in the latter stages of her outdoor track and field season, and sends a message here at the Bill Dellinger Invitational. Oregon State is ready to run in the cross-country season, led by Kaylee Mitchell, who comes across the line in 19:37.2. And then now back to the finish here. Again, these are the two from Cal Poly, I believe.
UC Davis.
Or UC Davis, rather. They're going to race to the finish here as they will finish second and third. So as Weidler, I think, was going to get that second position ahead of last year's champion, Sierra Atkins. And then Lexy Halladay-Lowry, top BYU finisher. The Cougars figuring prominently here in the team scoring, as we'll keep an eye as the top duck runner comes across the line in Maddie Elmore back in 7th.
And here comes Izzy Thornton-Bott, the champion from 2 years ago, in 9th. So BYU, Paul, 4, 5, 8. A very strong top 3, as I mentioned in the open. They have, both teams actually have pretty good runners at the very top of the leaderboard. And then you see that BYU contingent you had mentioned before, the 4 runners, J.C. Farmer, the aforementioned J.C. Farmer, Anastasia Davis, Sadie Sargent, and Destiny Everett taking places 12 through 15.
Yeah, so Davis coming through in 13th position will be the 5th runner across for BYU. That should seal the deal for the Cougars, who make an appearance in Oregon and will leave town with the Bill Dellinger Championship on the women's side. To be confirmed here momentarily is the last Oregon runner still to come across the line there. It looks like now a pair for the Ducks coming through in this stretch here. Tatum Miller and Ellen Nelson. So Miller ahead of Nelson. That gets Oregon to 5 and 78 points unofficially for them, with Cal Poly in third. So a great day for Cal Poly. The men win. The women unofficially now finishing third ahead of Oregon State and UCLA, rounding out the top 5. But that is fluid as we see now some changes to the team scoring in real time. UCLA falling back into 6th position.
Shout out to Maddie Elmore, Oregon's 1,500 meter specialist, who ends up being the #1 runner today for the Ducks in 7th. That's a really fine performance by her, and something that she'll definitely build on for the rest of the season. But really, really good performance for Maddie Elmore. Another shout out, if I may, Emma and Drew Peterson, the coaches of UC Davis. Emma's from Bristol in England, not the Connecticut one. But she's done a marvelous job in her 4th season there at UC Davis, and her husband is her assistant coach. But to get the 2nd and 3rd place finishers here, and what a job they've done with those two over the course of their entire 4 years is really quite impressive. A lot of really good coaches out in college track these days. But Maddie Elmore, she's a 4:08 1,500 runner. And for her to get 7th in an 8K race, she's got to be super pleased with that, Paul. And Anika Thompson, a nice performance in 11th. The aforementioned J.C. Farmer, with that great track pedigree in her family, she moves up and finishes 12th. I'm sure Josh Farmer is watching and really appreciating the performance. She was the 4th BYU runner and really came up 12 places between the 4th split and this final one.
The other thing that's great about the college programs these days, and again, obviously a cost of doing business in the sport of collegiate athletics, is all these trainers and medical professionals who are there at the finish line, making sure these women get back up on their feet, get into recovery, and the great thing about the resources that these athletes have available to themselves now is to maximize the opportunity and not be in a position where they do any damage here, certainly this early in the season.
Definitely. Very good point, Paul.
So keeping an eye on this finish shoot as we afford you the option to catch one of your favorite runners crossing the line. Each and every one of them successful on this day is, for many of these teams, the very early part of the cross-country season now underway as we move into the latter stages of September, as the racing has concluded here at the Bill Dellinger Invitational on the women's side.